Hello and welcome to Where to Go. I'm James Atkinson, Senior Brand Manager at DK Eyewitness.
And I'm Lucy Richards, Senior Editor at DK Eyewitness.
And welcome to Where to Go, where every fortnight we find out more about the world's favourite travel destinations with those people who know those places best. And it's our last episode of the series,
I know.
Lucy.
It's very sad.
It's been, we've been to LA, we've been to Manchester.
Yeah, been to Croatia.
Been to Croatia. Dubai. We've been so many places with so many brilliant people. Chiang Mai last week.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And we are ending the season with a real bang, and you're about to fangirl, right, Lucy?
Huge fangirling coming. Sorry, listeners. Yes, we're ending with a bang because we're going to Rome, the Eternal City.
The Eternal City. And I know you've been, Lucy, right?
Yeah, I went early this year, in fact, after I did Florence and Rome together. So I'm feeling it's really, and actually, it's very fresh on my mind. I'm really sort of feeling very Roman at the moment. And so I'm super excited. How about you, James? Have you have been? Of course you've been.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, quite a few years ago. So back in 2015, I think 2015. And yeah, we just went for a long weekend, but it really stands out in the memory of such one of those kind of incredible cities where you dream about going, you think you know what it's like and stuff, and then you actually get there and it is phenomenal. I mean, there's history on every step that you're taking, and you almost feel really small in the kind of grand scheme of everything that's ever happened to Rome. It does not disappoint in the slightest.
I think there's probably just nowhere else like Rome. It's totally like nowhere else. And I'm sure that we'll talk about this with Maria, but it's that kind of mix of old and new, all of that history.
Yeah, we talk about it a lot with so many cities, but old and new is exactly Rome.
Yes. And just, food like nowhere else, drink like nowhere else, amazing art. I just love, as I said, I want to be Roman. It's going to be a great episode.
Like, Italy ticks so many boxes. You've got and the first one you think about is food, but then when you add in everything else there with the history, with architecture, with everything else that you get in Rome, it's just magical. So,
yes,
who is going to, and this is where you're going to fangirl, who's going to discuss this magical city with us?
So we have today got Maria. Born in Melbourne and now based in Rome, Maria Pasquale is an award-winning food and travel writer who writes for the likes of USA Today, CNN, Photos and The Telegraph. And she's also the author of I Heart Rome and my personal favourite, How to Be Italian. So welcome, Maria.
Thanks so much, Lucy. Hey, James.
Welcome, Maria. It's brilliant to have you on the podcast. Such an honour to have you on the podcast. And you're our final guest of the season as well. So,
special guest.
Yeah, it's a very special guest.
Save the best for last.
To have you join us. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Set the expectations high. As usual, we're going to begin with learning a little bit more about Maria, followed by the all-important recommendations on where to go and insider knowledge on this famous city. We'll then hear a little bit about how the city's changed recently and what we can look forward to in the future.
So Maria, what exactly drew you to Rome?
I'm asked this question so many times, and every time I say it out loud, it sounds so cheesy and so corny. But I fell in love with Rome. And people ask me all the time, "Did you fall in love with the Roman? Did you come here to study? Did you come here to work?" And the answer was no. I did all that when I got here at different points of my time in Rome. But no, I fell in love with the city. My family had a very strong tie to Italy. Both of my parents were born in Italy, not in Rome, but I grew up as a child of migrants in Melbourne to two Italy-born parents who, maintained a very Italian household overseas. And so we started travelling. I started travelling here as a young child, and then through my 20s I would travel through Rome and cry every time I'd be on the way to the airport. And so it finally, it took many years of, thinking about it and, almost leaving. And then I finally bit the bullet in 2011 and moved over here. I thought for 3 months, and it's been 11 years. So the rest, as they say, is history.
Amazing. And what part of the city do you now live in?
I live in Trastevere. I don't know if you guys know that part of the city. It's, often described as being on the left bank, to use a Parisian term, which the Italians don't love because there's this always, friendly rivalry between the Italian and the French. But as we say, I mean, geographically, it sits on the left bank of the Tiber River. And Trastevere, because that's the way you pronounce it, because it's a bit of a tongue, tie for so many people. But it's... it means in Latin across the river, Trastevere, across the Tiber.
I see.
Lovely. And so Maria, so you just circling back, you said that your family, they aren't actually from Rome. Whereabouts in Italy are they from then?
My family are from Abruzzo, which is a region, east of Rome. So the town from which my parents come from is a small town in the province of Aquila. And it's an hour and a half east of Rome, not on the Adriatic. We're in the mountainous area of Abruzzo. And if you haven't been to Abruzzo, or any of the listeners haven't been to Abruzzo, it's still one of those, relatively green, and I say green in terms of tourism, one of those green areas of Italy that, for years we keep saying, it's going to be the next Umbria, it's going to be the next Tuscany. And it still keeps just kind of rolling along in its own way. And I really, I love when I hear positive stories about, the people that finally get a chance to visit.
Do you manage to get out there yourself much?
I do. I still have family there. So being first generation Australian, my grandparents never emigrated. They've passed on now, but we have very strong ties to Abruzzo. So my cousins and, a whole bunch of extended family still live there. So I usually spend Christmas in Melbourne every year, but I spend Easter usually in Abruzzo, and I try to get there a few times throughout the year. In summer it's great. In winter it's extremely cold, but especially for an Australian girl. But
of course.
But it's a great place to eat. It's, Abruzzo kind of has everything. I know we're here to talk about Rome, but it has the mountains, the lakes, the old medieval towns, and it is a really gorgeous part of, my first memories of Italy are of small town Abruzzo, and that's what I keep saying, one day kind of just fell in love with that contrast and that difference of, being a small girl in Italy, so different to Australia. And I knew one day I'd live here.
I was going to say, well, it's a running theme of guests we've had on the pod where we've talked about big Italian cities, and actually just outside, not very far away, is the rest of Italy. And you really can't go wrong with a lot of Italy too. But I was just going to say, obviously, you talked about that kind of love affair with Rome, the fact that you cried every time you left and stuff and made that jump. What do you love most about the city, if you could kind of summarize it? And I know that's difficult.
It is. It's always so hard to distill, really. But, Rome has this magnificent way of getting under your skin. I mean, and I'm sure this is the same about many cities of, the ancient world in a sense. But, it has this magnificent ability to make you feel a part of the present and the past and the future at the same time. I mean, I remember as a young, almost adolescent, travelling through Rome and driving past the Colosseum and seeing Romans just walking past it without, completely nonchalant, and I think, well, the Colosseum is standing right there, and it's been standing there for over 2,000 years. How can you not stop in wonder? And now that I live here, I mean, there are times where you do that. You go about your daily business and you kind of turn around and the Pantheon's there, the Colosseum's there. But, Rome is a great city of contrasts and contradictions. It's, it's layer upon layer of history, of architecture, of culture, of, and now this modern lifestyle that, always sits juxtaposed to this, magnificent history of, triumphs, tragedies, popes, gladiators, emperors, all of that. And so you kind of feel small in that largeness, I guess, in a sense, but it's a beautiful feeling that kind of makes you feel alive.
There's something epic about it.
It is
I
epic.
suppose people must feel that way about New York because New York is, in its own metropolis. But Rome, as exactly as you're saying, Maria, it's all of that history. And I love that description of sort of past, present and future. There is something truly epic and kind of awesome and like no other place about it.
I'm going to steal that word, Lucy. It is epic.
It's one of those places. I mean, the New York comparison, actually, Lucy, is quite bang on, where I think, it's such a cultural kind of point in history and place where so many things have happened and everyone has their own imagination of what it's like until you actually visit it. And I felt, Maria, you kind of hit the nail on the head as well, where you talk about the kind of modernity of the city too, and that's what kind of surprised me when I went there, was like how modern it was and how that sits along. You've literally got like a wall full of like inscriptions and so on next to, I don't know, a H&M or something. And I don't know if that actually exists, but that's kind of what I remember, and just being really surprised by that. And like it's a fully functioning city with this incredible history that just sits on,
which often makes it such a complex city to manage. And I'm not here to defend any political realm that manages this city or attempts to, but there have been so many occasions over the years where local constructors try to dig to keep extending the metro line, and and they literally keep coming across new archaeological pieces and sites and things that have never been discovered before. And again, that leads to not a very popular delay for the people that live here, but it is what it is. It's part and parcel of living, as we've said, in a modern city in this current era of a city that has been standing for thousands of years.
So, I mean, we can't let you sort of get away without talking a little bit about your two wonderful books. And I kind of wanted to sort of firstly talk about I Heart Rome, because that's what we're here to talk about. But that's all like kind of recipes with history. And can you tell us a little bit about how do you go about collating Roman food? And, how do you kind of, just where do you start, really?
Where does one start? And that's the exact question I asked myself as soon as I signed the contract. I was like, well, that's all good and well, but I wanted to write this book and now I actually have to write it. So it's always, as a writer or as a creative, I'm sure you guys have those moments as well. Oh, wow, now I have to do it. I Heart Rome came out, I began writing it in 2016, but I began writing it, I say that, but, it's been years in the making in a sense, because I've been talking to, Romans and all those, I guess, those stories that I wanted to tell that are in the book are of people who are the custodians of Roman cuisine. They're those people that work tirelessly every day to maintain, protect and share those traditions that we hold on to so tightly in Rome and across Italy, of course. The book came out in 2017. My publisher is Smith Street Books in Melbourne and had a huge distribution network around the world. So I was very happy with how that went. And it was interesting because during the pandemic, sales spiked again because so many people were cooking at home. And because of that...
Cooking and dreaming about going to places
correct.
Like Rome.
And that's been the beauty of this book, is that it kind of combines my two loves. It's not just food, but it's travel as well. And so, we talk so often about armchair travel, and I think that I Heart Rome for me was a way to share my love of the city. It's a love letter to Rome. And it also shares, like I said, these stories of these custodians of Roman cuisine. So it has about 70 recipes, and they're not my recipes. As I said earlier, I'm not from Rome. My family's not from Rome. So I would never have even dreamt of writing, Roman food recipes not being Roman. So I collated those recipes, and they're a collection of them from Rome's chefs and butchers and, Roman friends. And, the most prominent bakery in the city has given me their recipe for pizza bianca, pizza rossa, and all of these wonderful baked treats. And the beauty of I Heart Rome is that it's actually just been redesigned, revamped, and will be released again worldwide in February under a new title, which I still can't reveal, I'm told, but a new title and a complete new look. So they've given it a complete new a rebirth.
Cool, that's fantastic.
And I imagine you've had to use that as an excuse to do a bit more research, right?
That's right. I had to go out there and eat everything again just to check that it was all in order.
It's a tough job, but someone's got to do it.
Exactly.
And then, Maria, obviously then How to Be Italian is all about sort of Italian culture at large. And for anyone like me who's just obsessed with, wanting to be Italian, this is an amazing starting point. Was it fun to sort of widen the lens from Rome and write something that's more encompassing and I suppose is getting under the skin more of a wider culture?
Oh, it was. And it just felt like such a natural step for me. So many of the things I wrote, you often think when you know something or when you live something and have been born into something, you think, gosh, is that interesting? Is that fascinating? Even though I've always known, I guess we could all say, the world is enamored with Italy and Italians and the Italian lifestyle. And I knew that would be something of interest, and especially during the pandemic, because it came out just late last year. I wrote it, throughout the year of 2020. While I was in lockdown in Melbourne, which was extremely challenging creatively. But, Italy, and it's come back with a vengeance, as we might talk about later on, I know, in terms of tourism. But, the thirst that people have for travel, has not been extinguished by the pandemic. As we know, people were so desperate to get back to Italy. It was one of the hardest hit nations, at least initially. So I think so many of us had Italy in our hearts, especially in that emergency phase. And so the book is a celebration. For me, again, it's, like I said, a celebration, really, a celebration of all the things that we love about Italy. I mean, the country is not perfect. No country is, but by gosh, so many aspects of it are.
It's really true. Like you kind of almost forget really those early months of the pandemic, like how badly Italy was affected and how much that kind of stood out to the world in terms of the dangers of coronavirus. But lots of, I remember lots of the reaction just being this kind of like outward, just basically everyone speaking about how much they love Italian culture, how much they love the Italian way of doing things, and then the loads of celebratory web articles, magazines, blah blah blah, newspaper features, just outpouring of love for Italy. And I think your book really perfectly kind of encapsulates like some of the good side of that moment in a way, the kind of Italian in us all.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Queuing and mobilizing and being organized are just unfortunately not part of the Italian DNA. And,
we're recording this just after this giant queue in London.
Exactly. And and I have to say, the Italian press has been, they've just incredulously look on saying, the Queen has been honoured, the only way the English know how, by lining up, because it's so not an Italian thing. And, to see those Italians mobilise, not in terms of the Italian DNA, kissing, touching, hugging, all of those things that I think are part of most cultures. But, the Italians are very, it's very visible here, and it's, touch is so important. And I think the way the Italians mobilised, they really did give, at least in my opinion, and I write about this in the book, examples of resilience and real strength of character.
Absolutely. So thank you very much for that. And we will now delve into some of your recommendations on where to go in Rome. So we're going to kick off our round of what to do in Rome. We're going to do a quick fire tour of the city, naming a couple of categories that you, Maria, just have to suggest just one thing to do. So are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. Let's go.
Let's go. Okay, I'm going to kick off by asking you for your favourite thing to see in the city.
Oh, the Pantheon, without a doubt.
Yeah?
Why? What is it about? I mean, I could talk about the Pantheon for 10 minutes, but we're not here to listen to me. We're here to listen to Maria. Maria, what is it about the Pantheon that is so special?
The Pantheon, it's grandeur. It's magnificent. It's the only monument and building we have in Rome that is, it remains completely intact. From the empire, it is just magnificent. You feel so small, and standing next to it. And the thing I love about it is, obviously it's in the same place. It always has been. It doesn't move, but you kind of move through the city, and then there are times where you just kind of turn a corner, and it's just kind of there. It's just so imposing.
Yeah. And the dome is just incredible. Like it looks like it could be a piece of modern architecture, that dome. How it's sort of supported mysteriously. It's stunning.
Well, it does. And I do often compare it, as, so many archaeologists and architects and historians do, to the, like the pyramids of Giza. I mean, to this day, architects and engineers still aren't able to replicate the, the unsupported dome that is the Pantheon. And then the oculus, people often don't know that the oculus, the round part at the top, is open. And so it does rain inside the Pantheon, and it's just, the engineering of that, it doesn't flood. I mean, these are Romans of, incredible prowess and intelligence that, have created a monument of such that has lasted all these years. The Pantheon, hands down, my favourite monument in the city.
Excellent.
That's incredible. I didn't know it could rain in the Pantheon. That's
I didn't know that for many years. And I often thought, to be quite honest, I really thought it was an urban myth. Because I'd read about it and people have said it to me and I've seen, some images, and I just thought, no, that can't be real. And it actually is. So next time you're in Rome, go and check that out.
Yeah, there's something to do on a rainy day.
Yeah, quite literally. So then, Maria, your favourite thing or place to drink?
Oh, gosh. Okay, well, there's a couple of places. I'll try and quickly fit them in. Drink Kong in Rome by Patrick Pistolesi, who is an Irish Roman bartender. He's won, I can't list them for you, but has won probably, all kinds of bar tending awards, and it is for real mixologists. Drink Kong is fantastic, and that's just in the Monte neighbourhood, not far from the Colosseum, and it has, really cool interior and neon lights, and like I said, the cocktails are just incredible, and they match it with an international menu of food, dumplings and lobster rolls and all of those sorts of things that some people might not be expecting to eat when they come to Rome. But Drink Kong has really given the the food and drink platform in Rome this international hit, which at least for us living here, so desperately needed. The other place, Rimessa Roscioli, for anyone looking for a wine in the city. Roscioli is a very, household name in this city. They have one of the most important bakeries and salumeria restaurants, so a place where you go and eat cold meats and wine. And so either Roscioli restaurant or Rimessa Roscioli, where you can go and do a wine tasting, which I'm sure, most people won't forget.
I did go there when there was a wine tasting. I went for dinner, and sadly I wasn't part of the wine tasting, and I thought I need to come back for that wine tasting because the sommeliers clearly really knew their stuff. The pasta was delicious.
Well, you'll have to come back, Lucy. And the thing is, you mentioned that, the sommeliers, they really are wonderfully travelled and talented, and they really do get out of Rome and travel through the entire country. They have, I think, over 2,500 labels there at the in their cantina. So you definitely must get there.
Wow, amazing. So, okay, this is a horrible one.
Okay,
Maria. You've written a whole book. You've written a whole book about this. Just one thing to eat.
Oh. No, actually, that's easier than you think. Carbonara. Yeah, I say to people, if you haven't eaten a carbonara in Rome, you have never eaten a carbonara. And I'm sorry that's going to disappoint a lot of people, but it's the truth. I say it to everyone that comes to Rome because there are so many, installments of the carbonara outside of Rome. And, generally Italy, Italian cuisine, which is not a homogenous cuisine, but let's say Italian cuisine, is one of the most replicated and imitated around the world. And
it's often got wrong as well.
And it is. And then that's okay. I always say, as long as people are having fun. Sometimes we take food a little bit too seriously, but carbonara, on the other hand, it doesn't have onion, it doesn't have mushrooms, it doesn't have garlic, it does not have cream under any circumstance.
Yep.
And people, and I've sat with friends and family who are eating it in Rome, and it's so silky and creamy, and they say, "Are you sure it doesn't?" And I'm like, "Yes, no cream. It doesn't have it. No cream.
Magic." The magic of magic of Italy. How do they do it?
Yes, they're magicians.
What does make that silkiness? Is it the kind of cheese and the water, or is it?
It's the water. It's the pasta water, which we call acqua pazza, often in Italy, which means crazy water, because it's, it almost is magic. But I think it's just practice as well. I often say, practice makes perfect. Carbonara, you often, it's the eggs in Rome that, are also quite important. The quality of the guanciale that you use. The guanciale is the pork cheek or the pork jowl. Our equivalent of bacon, I guess, but so much better than bacon. Not pancetta. There are recipes with pancetta, which is from the pork belly. But I think that, those ingredients come together with that, salty, creamy, silky mix of the water that has been, like I said, mixed with the egg and cheese mixture in it. Look, it's a technique that takes, like I said, a lot of practice. A chef once said to me in Rome many years ago, when I first started my interviews in my own work, said to me, carbonara is a lot like life. And it reminded me of, the fact that Italians relate food is life initially. And he said to me, carbonara is a lot like life. If you're not watching, you'll stuff it up. So, because if it's sitting on the flame for too long, it can easily and very quickly become scrambled eggs. And, you need to be super careful.
Yes. Whenever I've attempted to make it, and I think actually I've really butchered it, it's always like scrambled eggs, pasta with scrambled eggs. So I need to practice. It's a craft, as you say. It's an art and a craft.
It is. My trick is to mix it off the flame. So try that next time.
Mix it off the flame.
Try that.
Yeah.
Is there one particular place where someone should go for a carbonara?
I'd like to say Da Enzo in Trastevere, although most people who know of this age-old trattoria, which is my favourite, will know that you have to line up, unfortunately, and it takes forever, but it is absolutely worth it.
This is where our queuing expertise comes in.
That's right.
Exactly. The Brits listening are like, no problem, Maria. Yeah, we'll happily join that queue.
There.
No, you won't have a problem. Exactly.
So the next question, Maria, is your favourite day activity in Rome?
Oh, I would say, look, getting lost in one of the neighbourhoods. Obviously, I'm quite biased. Trastevere is the neighbourhood that I live in, and it really is this most beautiful part of the city. Like I said, it sits on the left bank of the Tiber River, just south of the Vatican. It's, during the day, it's this, it has this beautiful spirit of community, and you feel like you're in this little village. Everybody knows each other. There are a lot of pedestrian areas where cars aren't allowed in. It's the classic, if you Google image Trastevere, you will see scenes of a Roman film. I mean, that's almost what it looks like. They are backdrops to, scenography of films, because it's the ivy hanging off buildings and the cobblestone streets and a Fiat 500 parked somewhere, or a Vespa zooming past, and people eating during the day at a trattoria. And this, it really is. It's one of the most picturesque neighbourhoods of the city, and the very reason for Romans loving the neighbourhood and coming here to drink and eat in the evenings. Sadly, there are a lot of tourist restaurants in this neighbourhood, but if you dig deep and I do believe that there are a number of quality places to eat still in the neighbourhood. So it is a great place to come and spend your evenings even.
Fantastic.
Excellent.
Brilliant. And this also might be a difficult one given the city we're talking about, but your favourite museum or gallery?
Oh, also very hard. There are hundreds of them in Rome. I love spending, and that would be my, if I was allowed to say two things I love during the day. So Trastevere would be one, and yes, galleries and museums on a Sunday, which I love. A quick couple that I often recommend are Galleria Spada, which is not far from Piazza Navona, and there is this Borromini optical illusion. So I won't give too much away, but that's something that I really recommend, especially for those who are looking to, even perhaps, they're coming to Rome on a second or third time, they've seen the bigger museums. Galleria Spada is definitely one I recommend. And also Galleria Doria Panfili, which has Rome's largest private art collection. And the gallery of mirrors is inspired by Versailles. And you'll find, opera masterpieces by Raffaello, Guido Reni, Caravaggio. So they're probably the two I would recommend away from the big ones.
Excellent.
Great. Well, this marks the end of the quickfire round. Well done, Maria. That's a really, really, if you listen to one guide on Rome, that is all you really need to know. But yeah, we've got a bit more.
So then, Maria, let's move on to some highlights that listeners shouldn't miss.
Oh.
Do you have a few? I know that's really hard. We're talking here, we'll move on to sort of more kind of hidden gems, but sort of the key sites, if someone was coming to Rome, what would you say they shouldn't miss?
Oh, look, for first-time visitors, and it can be daunting, Rome really is such a maze of history and architecture, and there is so much to see. But look, I wouldn't miss the main monuments if it's your first time. You just can't go past them. The Colosseum, the Vatican, the Pantheon, that historical centre, which is quite compact to walk around. Although at the end of the day, you will realise that you have actually walked way more than you think. But it is quite compact in that, I usually don't recommend. Rome is not a city for, a hop on, hop off bus, because unfortunately, buses cannot get into the historical centre. So, that could be a mode of transport, perhaps, to get you from the Colosseum to the Vatican. But the historical centre is so packed full of rich cultural monuments and historical gems. I definitely wouldn't miss it. The Spanish Steps, the main shopping districts as well, the Trident area for, your design shopping or street shopping. The historical centre is not to be missed.
Is one of those cities that, you often walk into the middle of a big city and you find it's incredibly touristic and almost impossible to think, but you just seeing that history, it just distracts you from everything else. It's you can't miss it. You can't help but feel a kind of atmosphere there, and it almost there's I remember being there and there being tons and tons of people around, but everyone's quieter than they often are, and actually people are quite reverential to the buildings around them. So I do think you just have to walk, you have to explore.
You do. It's a walking city. It really is a walking city.
Absolutely.
And as you've hit on as well, Maria, often they're not, yes, you've got the Colosseum and the Forum, etc. But I found it amazing how I just round a corner and there would be a ruin, or there would be an ancient column, literally sort of each way you turn, the city really is filled with history. And that I just find that amazing. It just sort of blows my mind.
It is amazing. I walked through the Jewish Ghetto, another part of the city that I highly recommend. But I walked through the other day and then out into a small square, and there were, young Roman children kicking a soccer ball around. And so Rome, away from being this, as we said earlier, this modern day metropolis, you still manage to find these little corners and, pockets of the city that give you these glimpses and tastes of real Roman life.
Yeah, cool. Incredible. Love it.
So on the sort of flip side of that, what are Rome's best kept secrets? Obviously, those that you're willing to share with us. I'm sure you have some that, you don't want letting slip.
They're just yours.
Just mine, because no one's listening.
Yeah, we won't tell.
No, that's right. Let's not tell anyone. I think, seeing Rome from above, I think, is one of my favourite things to do. And, we're so fortunate in Rome that there have been this, spate of rooftop bars that have opened over the last few years. So, and some of them are giving access to the city. There is one located in the Piazza Navona area, and until recently, unless you had friends who owned, a noble palace in that area, you really would not have access to that sort of view. And so, and that one's called Terrazza Borromini. And even if they are listening, I will say I don't think the service is fantastic. I don't think the cocktails are fantastic. But you know what? Like you said, James, the city's packed and then you see the monument and you don't care. It's exactly the same for Terrazza Borromini. Yeah. I go there all the time and, the view is breathtaking. It really is. You have you look down at Piazza Navona, this bird's eye view, which is spectacular. And there are a number of others. There's the court in Rome where you could feel like you could touch the Colosseum, and it's the only bar in Rome with unobstructed views of the Colosseum. NH collection at the Fori Imperiali, which has a view of the wedding cake, as most people call it, the monument to Vittorio Emanuele II in Piazza Venezia, and the Roman Forum spreads out before your very eyes as well. So that's what I usually do, and what I love taking, where I love taking friends and family when they visit. But I think the other thing, some other, I guess, architectural gems are probably my favourite in Rome, the things that people don't expect. So the Colosseo Cuadrato, which is the square Colosseum, and it's one of our finest examples of fascist architecture in Rome, and it's located in the Eur neighbourhood, and Fendi, I believe, have recently taken over that building, but it's a building that you can go and visit. It has a museum. And it's this, if anyone, I know we're not doing visual on this podcast, but you could go and have a look at this. And it has the arches of the Colosseum, but it's this modern day concrete interpretation, which kind of doesn't sound that beautiful, but, very fascinating. And then Coppede is another district of the city in Rome's Trieste neighbourhood in northern Rome. And it's this almost Gaudi-esque fairy tale villas named after fairies, fairies, and 40 odd buildings and villas that you can kind of get lost in, and that's a great neighbourhood to walk around. I think the neighbourhoods is a great way to explore Rome a little bit out of the historical centre.
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
That's really, really, really good shout.
And so then whilst we're talking then about kind of being outside of the historic centre, we sort of touched on this earlier when we were talking about your family, Maria, but what is there to do sort of outside of the city itself, sort of in the surrounding areas for, do you have any recommends for sort of day trips, for example?
Look, Lazio as a region, so Lazio is the region that, Rome sits within and is the capital of, aside from being the capital of the country, of course. And it's a relatively unknown region outside of Rome because, most foreigners who do visit, they know the regions of Tuscany and Piemonte and Sicily perhaps now, getting a bit more adventurous heading down south. But Lazio has some incredible coastline, which I was even surprised many years ago to discover and, or uncover. The Sperlonga beaches and Terracina and Gaeta, which is an old medieval, fishing village. That's about an hour and a half, not even, or less than 2 hours away from Rome. And then you have the Pontine Islands, Ponza and Ventotene and Palmarola. And, they're often dubbed, the Maldives or the Caribbean of Italy, and look, the waters there are quite spectacular. So there are those. I mean, that's probably not a day trip, but that's a great getting out of Rome for a couple of days if you're planning on, staying close to the capital. Then you have Ostia Antica, which has the, another ancient ruins and a wonderful archaeological site. And then, the wine country, the Castelli Romani, which is where we go to drink wine and eat porchetta all day long. So that's
perfect.
Another great.
What a day!
Wouldn't be a day trip if food and wine wasn't involved, of course.
Of course not. Absolutely not. Oh, fantastic! Well, that's a brilliant introduction of kind of lots of things to do in Rome. A brilliant introduction to the city. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about Rome at present and the very near future as well. An eternal city fusing ancient wonders with a modern metropolis, Rome brings history to life like nowhere else. And whether you want to wander through the ruins of the Roman Forum, gaze up at the spectacular ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, or taste the world-famous food in the markets of Campo de' Flori, your DKR Witness travel guide makes sure you experience all that Rome has to offer. Get your copy of DKR Witness Rome wherever you get your books, or find it via the link in our episode bio. So Maria, you sort of alluded to sort of Italy and Rome and the impacts of the pandemic, etc., and how the book kind of came out of that. How has Rome actually changed in recent times?
Well, look, I can tell you that this summer has been, tourism has come back with a vengeance, as it has across Italy. August, which is traditionally the time for Romans to head out of the city to have their annual holidays, that took place this year. So there were no Romans in Rome, but it was full of tourists. And, which is great to see. The city has been, like so many big cities in the world, it's been, craving for that tourist to come back. And look, for the most part, I mean, as has, taken place across the world, I mean, most restrictions aren't in place. All of those COVID mask wearing is, I guess on public transport, we still have mask wearing or in a taxi. But other than that, I mean, you really wouldn't know that anything had even happened around here, to be honest, which after, 2.5, I should say, very long years for Italy, for the world, for Rome, especially the hospitality industry and the tourism sector are extremely thrilled to have this, what, most news outlets are coining, revenge travel. And so many people have come back with a vengeance. And I think that Rome has bounced back. I think globally we're seeing, an unfortunate staff shortage and, a lack of service in a number of areas. And, Rome, like any big city of the world, is not immune to that. I'm really hoping that kind of irons itself out over the, next year or two, which I do believe that it will take another couple of years for, tourism to really settle. We're going to see, I think, peaks and troughs over the next couple of years.
Absolutely. I mean, I think one thing the pandemic did, and we talked about this earlier, is like, people wrote their bucket lists. They did they sort of really thought long and hard about where they wanted to go next. And it does seem like Rome, we've got 2 guidebooks to Rome. We've got Top 10 Rome and DK Eyewitness Rome as well, and both of them been flying off the shelves this summer, outselling most other major cities around the world. And I think that's really lovely to see in a way. I think Rome just has that romance that people really missed, and really, it's that kind of atmosphere that, and the buzz that you get from traveling to a really special place.
Yeah, and also, Maria, I think to your point earlier about that timelessness of Rome, it's something, obviously we've been through something tragic, but there's something about Rome that you just feel like Rome has had such a long history, and I think it's probably got an enormous future in front of it. There's something about Rome that you feel like Rome will always be there, and that's reassuring.
It is, and no accident that it's called the Eternal City. That is the very reason, because Rome is... It's continuous, it's forever, and it's, it's always been here and it always will be here. And I think that for us, all of us, our generation, for everyone that has lived the past 2 or 3 years, I mean, if for anything, we've been craving an anchor of some sort, and a city like Rome. I mean, I myself, who am, I'm a traveler, I travel for pleasure, I travel for work. It's my, my one pure pleasure in life, as it is for most people, and during those years or months of lockdown, I kept craving, big cities, even though I'd kind of moved away a little bit from the big cities, but, like London, New York, Rome, Paris, because they're the constants, they're the classics, and you anchor to them.
It's life at its fastest, isn't it? And sometimes slowest.
Absolutely. But, in times of uncertainty, I think that Rome really does offer this sense of comfort. And it has for me, at least. You walk around the city, and as things have slowly come back to normal, I mean, up until recently, before at least the summer, there were, queues everywhere. In my local cheese stall, there's small spaces and people are still respecting distancing and all of those sorts of things. But, if it wasn't for that, you kind of do. You walk around these old streets and you think, gosh, if these walls could talk, they could tell so many stories, and they will continue to.
Yeah. So I'm sure most listeners are desperate to go to Rome, but Maria, you will have absolutely sold Rome to them even more. Can you recommend a particular time when they should come? You hit on earlier, tourists, an influx of tourists over the summer. A shoulder season's better? What would you recommend? When's the best time for people to go?
Look, up until a few years ago, or at least pre-pandemic, we used to have the off-season, which I would always recommend. But, that's kind of changed. And, with the, travel being, so relatively accessible to so many more people are coming, to Rome all year round, or at least travelling to Italy all year round. I do recommend, and at least anyone who experienced summer in Italy this year, it was excruciatingly hot, and we had unseasonable and worrying high temperatures and high humidity. I really wouldn't recommend, July or August personally, and also because of the closures. So many Romans do go away, businesses do close. That's in August, So even though there's a wonderful summer program in the city, summer is always, summer. And as much as I say that to people, it doesn't really kind of deter them. I think spring and autumn for me are probably the most wonderful times of the year. So October, November is a gorgeous time to visit Rome, and you really do see that season change. And, and we eat seasonally, getting back to food. I love autumn in Italy and in Rome. And as the menus on blackboards start to change, it's a wonderful time of year. And also Christmas. I think that Christmas in the city, the 8th of December, the lights turn on and the whole city kind of comes alive with all the Christmas trimmings. And I think that's another great time of year to visit.
I was going to touch on Christmas, because a couple of years ago I commissioned an article about the best Christmas markets in Europe, and was pretty almost surprised that Rome came back. You think of your Christmas markets as being Germanic and Scandinavian, etc. But the market in Piazza Navona and across there, the lights just look incredible, and it looks like quite a unique atmosphere as well.
It does. And look, it doesn't snow in Rome, so you kind of still have this mild winter weather, which is lovely for walking around and, really getting to enjoy the city. And funny you mentioned the Piazza Navona Christmas Christmas market because it actually had stopped for a couple of years, of course, for obvious reasons, but it is back. I've just had confirmation this week. So that will be back on this year. And so you can, walk through Piazza Navona. They have a carousel and, families and, people are just walking around eating fairy floss and all of that sort of stuff.
Lovely.
Fantastic. Well, that's wonderful to hear. And, speaking of Christmas and looking sort of even further afield, are there any kind of events that you're kind of looking forward to? Any particular festivals or particular times of year that anyone should visit for?
Look, as I mentioned, the Summer Festival really is a great program of events that, the Roman, a number of Roman associations and the Rome Council initially began many years ago for those Romans who couldn't afford to leave the city during the August holiday period. So, along the river you'll have stands and music, you'll have outdoor cinema, a number of parks come alive with, whether it be a wine festival, a beer festival, and all those sorts of wonderful summer activities, live music, etc. For sporting fans, we have the Rome International Tennis in May and a number of other sporting events throughout the year. And I love Carnivale. That's probably one of my favourite times of the year, Carnival, which Mardi Gras, whatever people call it outside of Italy. But, that period of Lent just in the lead up to Easter. And, of course, I love it because of the sweets. So you have – and this is the beautiful thing about Rome and about Italy in terms of its food customs. They're so tied to history and to culture that, for Father's Day, we have a special sweet in Italy. At Christmas, we eat special treats, and the same at Easter and the same during Carnival. And, there really isn't a time of year where we haven't found an excuse to eat something. So Carnival is probably my favourite.
Which also means that no visit is the same, right? You can find, you talked about the seasonality of food and stuff before, spread out across the year, do multiple visits, right?
Absolutely. I think your visit can change, even if you were to follow just the seasonality, like you said, of the food. I mean, I think the market, which is such a cornerstone of Italian food culture, and I always say to people, I could tell what season it is, even if I didn't know, just by walking into one of the local neighbourhood markets, because just the colour of, the produce, you can kind of tell if it's autumn or spring or the summer fruits have come out. So, every visit to Rome can be different, which is great.
So, in summary, whenever.
Exactly. Exactly. We should have just said that from the beginning and just saved ourselves a whole lot of time. Never not a good time to visit Rome, really.
We'll just cut the episode just to that bit. And
exactly. Visit Rome any day of the week.
Well, I mean, I wish we had much more time because Maria, we could talk to you all day. I mean, it's such a stunning city to talk about. Such a I think I speak for Lucy where I'm itching to go back already, but also what a fantastic way for us to end our series as well. So thank you once again.
Thank you so much. It's a crazy special city, as I always say, and I look forward to welcoming you in Rome for a Carbonara very soon.
Oh yes,
absolutely.
Thank you, Marie.
Let's do it. That would be wonderful.
Booking my flight. Huge thanks to Maria. I genuinely feel like I'm on a bit of a high. That was just loved that so much. Obviously loved Rome already, but Maria really, really did Rome justice. I think we can all agree.
I mean, it's the end of the day here, and I feel like I've got a spring in my step just from discussing Rome. So, an enormous thanks to Maria. It was a really wonderful tour, and what a great way to end the series as well. We just said it, but my God, it's fantastic.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Maria. And you can all follow Maria's adventures at Heart Rome on Instagram and Twitter, or you can visit her website, heartrome.com.
Yes, highly recommended. And obviously there's the 2 books that we mentioned earlier as well. Very, very much recommend those. So that was our final episode of the season. As we said earlier, it's taken us through so many different places. I completely forgot about the likes of Greenland.
I know.
We've really been all over. So we've got big plans, listener, for the next season. We will be back. You'll be pleased to know, or hopefully you'll be pleased to know. And we'd like to know kind of where you'd like to see us go next. So if you've got kind of any feedback on the season, anywhere that you think you'd love us to visit, or anyone that you'd love us to speak to, do reach out. So you can find us at DK Eyewitness on all of the sort of social channels, at DK Eyewitness Books on TikTok even. That's a secret. And actually, you can also email us travelguides@uk.dk.com. And we'd love to hear your feedback. We really, really hope you've been enjoying the season as much as we've enjoyed recording it. A huge thank you to all of our wonderful guests. There's all 13 of you. There's so many to name. We, as I say, we will be back very soon. So check out all of those social channels for news of when we'll be coming back. And in the meantime, there's loads and loads of episodes to re-listen to, and let us know where we should go next. So, going to go all Roman here. Ciao from me.
And ciao from me.
And we shall see you very soon.
Where to Go was produced by the team at DK Witness and the wonderful Julia Baker. It was presented by James Atkinson and Lucy Richards and mastered by Johnny Coddington at Bottle Rocket Recording. For more information about DK Witness, follow us on social media at DK Eyewitness or visit dk.com/eyewitness.
And don't forget to please like, rate, review and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Your support means so much to us.